Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of the FreudenFreude weekly, podcast, video podcast episode. There we go. Where we bring you content to help you grow as a person and as a leader.
Sandra.
And I'm Claudia.
And we are coaches.
Coaches.
Okay, well, I am a coach for expats, for executives, and for young professionals.
There you go. And I accompany leaders, entrepreneurs, as well as their teams in tech and beyond. Yes, but today, a more general topic, I think, that can be applied over quite a few scenarios and in quite a few contexts is making knowledge stick. What brought me to this is, I have a background in tutoring and things like that. I always liked, those kind of topics, but in coaching in particular, I think, Sandra, you know this as well. We have our coachees who in these moments of deep dive at the intensity of a coaching session realize something and they come to some knowledge, some insight, some a breakthrough, and they said, my life is never going to be the same. And then guess what?
Yes.
It doesn't stick. Okay, so maybe we can today, as we talk about it, and I'll hand it right over to you, talk about how we can capture stuff that we're formally learning, like literally, like take a course, read a book, whatever, a formal knowledge acquisition, and then maybe how we can hold on to these transitionary insights and aha moments that we get in life, whether it be in coaching or with on, because that's knowledge and learning as well, and it's kind of tricky in both ways.
Yeah. So one of the things, thank you, Claudia, by the way, and good evening to everybody. One of the things that I was noticing, if you look at school teachers' classrooms, what do they look like? They have the ABCs all around the classroom. They have repetition of the ABCs. They have, if you're talking about colors, they have all books in colors, by the colors. Okay, I'm sorry. They shuffle them through by colors, I'm sorry. And then what do you do if you're learning the alphabet? It's all about repetition. And then as you go through school, through life, everything is truly repetition. The problem is that some do better than others. Some teachers do better than others in repetition, or they don't help you connect the dots, which is another method. Right? So what you learned in the prior school year or from prior years, if people were to use what you have as previous knowledge, even life knowledge, to teach you new things, it wouldn't be so hard if people were to see that, we learn through experience, right? We learn through what we've already experienced. And that's how a lot of things are created in life, even sayings, the Chinese proverbs and all these kind of things, they're based on experience. So one of the biggest things that helps coaches help their people, their clients, have that breakthrough moment is by sometimes using what the person likes and using it into a metaphor, or bringing something that they already know by helping them connect the dots, once again. So that is one of the three methods. So it is connecting the dots, using what you already know, and repetition.
Yeah, repetition, definitely. It's an important one. And I sometimes say, if I were only to remember the things I have forgotten, I would be a genius. But it's like, it dissolves. Knowledge just evaporates, it seems, right? It has a certain half-life. And repetition is a way of holding on to things like that, especially as you try to put stuff from short-term memory into long-term memory.
Oh, yeah.
That first week, the first 2 weeks, the first months, absolutely crucial. Once it's safely embedded, you might have an easier time recalling it. But in the beginning, it truly is the case that your brain is designed to forget. It's not designed to remember, because we are so bombarded by knowledge and experiences and perceptions and colors and all that kind of stuff. Your brain can't possibly hold on to it. And so it's actually designed to forget, except for the things that really truly matter and were deemed important. Okay. So during the moment that you acquire the knowledge, the more you can tell your brain, this is important stuff. Don't forget it. Yeah. Don't forget it. The more you can engage into that, the more the knowledge will have stickiness. Okay. And what can make this knowledge important? It's context, it's the story around it that you tell, not just facts and figures, but story. And we know that storytelling involves completely different parts of the brain than facts, figures, and lists and kind of like more abstract information. So moving the knowledge and combining those different areas of the brain, it like fires it up so much more. The context and the story, the intent with which you take it. It's like, this is like so important, right?
Yes.
I mean, sometimes it even need to be important to us. How often have we read a book that maybe our boyfriend or very important person in our life, like a teacher, really was passionate about, and we all of a sudden kind of got passionate around it too, even though it didn't come from us originally, but we kind of borrowed this passion from another thing, but we brought a certain emotional intensity to it. We involve more than just as, okay, so I have to kind of look this over and it's all kind of interesting, but right, if you approach that, nothing's gonna stick, people. You have just through body language, through emotions, through the way that you talk to yourself, told the brain that it's okay to forget. Yeah. And so context is important, the emotional intensity, setting the intention. I think from the get-go that stuff is supposed to be there. Another thing I think that ties into that, before I hand it back over to you, but just let me.
Sure. Go ahead.
I stand on my soapbox here and preach, people. Is the active learning. Okay, so that might not be necessarily that important to us right now, but we can possibly imagine scenarios where this particular knowledge will be important. Okay. Imagine you learn, okay, let's take a coaching thing. You learn about stress and stress coping mechanisms. You might right now not be stressed. So you do not have this emotional intensity about learning about stress because there's nothing in it for you right now. But you can imagine, as a coach, I will have clients who are stressed. I will be stressed once that and that might happen. Right. And so you, by again imagining scenarios and applying it, you make it important. And that's also like active learning. What does it mean beyond the word on the page or what we hear in a video podcast or whatever? What does it mean for me? Why is it important to me and my learning, my place in life? So that is, I think, already how in the moment of learning, we can already anchor it. And then, as you said, repetition and stuff is later to kind of keep reminding us. But so those were kind of a couple of things that I wanted to bring to the table.
Perfect. When you touched one of the important topics that I do remember very well, and that is the emotion that you put into that moment. It reminded me about when I started working in IT at a newspaper, a very famous newspaper in Mexico City. And the emotion that I put towards that job was for the desire to learn, right? You of course, you start working and you have to learn new things. You have to memorize things. And, you have all these important editors, writers there in the newspaper, and you want to look your best. You want to be as smart and as fast as whatever you want to think about. You just want to be effective. And I was remembering the times that I was learning new things. I would remember them like that because my intention was, you need to look good. That was incredible, but that was enough for me to remember so many things, because I was at a newspaper where it was elite, it was pretty, it was famous, it was all of these things. So for me, putting that emotion, that importance into where I was, just made it for me important enough for me to learn it. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to touch bases on is that how certain people learn, right? So there's different methods. There's so many ways. And one of the things that I learned when I had to study for tests, unfortunately, in my younger years, I was what they would call a sponge student, which was I would absorb all the information. I would learn it from back to front and however you want it. The moment at the test, and 1 week had passed and I could not remember nothing. I would just remember certain absorbs of the topic and like that. And then 1 month, 2 months later, that's it. It's like I never studied. Okay. Is that an effective method? Well, it depends, right? It depends. Depends on what you're studying. It depends on what probably it's just a extracurricular class that you're taking. It's an effective method. And the effective method for me, if you're questioning how did I become a sponge student, was I practiced in front of the mirror. That's what I did. I grabbed my notes and everything else, and I would practice in front of the mirror. And I would look at myself, how I was behaving, so I could make some kind of connection when I was in the exam to what I was looking at the mirror at that moment when I was studying that question in particular.
Like kind of a visualization that you did.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Another thing
into the situation, really imagining and associating your state, which again goes into this emotional involvement, right? Yeah. Sorry, I have very dry eye problems. Kind of involving more, but imagining yourself there, making it important again, because you knew you're going to sit in that exam, right?
Yes.
And so that kind of jacked up the importance of it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And one of the last methods was that I recently learned, if you allow me to say this one, what I do, and depends again. When you read, just read by certain paragraphs. Don't read the entire page. If it has 3 paragraphs, read per paragraph, okay? And then per paragraph, write next to it, if you can write in that book, if it's yours, write next to it your own interpretation of the words, of what you read.
Language, your own language. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So, that is another method. What do you think, Leia?
Well, I mean, that is also part of the way of more academic, let's say, active learning. It's like, figure out what you're going to learn, figure out what the details are, and summarize again, and, use your own language, because our own language is easier for us to remember, because it's closer to our getting too technical, but our deeper structure of knowledge, right? Because we remember things very often not in language, but we more in concepts that are kind of abstract, and it takes this translation of this in-depth or deep down structure into more the surface structure to rephrase things into language and then be able to communicate it. So if you put stuff in your own words, then it tends to come out again easier, right? That translation thing becomes easier. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is kind of if you had a good university, they would teach you some of these techniques in a freshman year or something like that. But knowing about something and applying it, that's a whole other thing. That's another show right there. Okay, so today it's about knowledge. Next time it's about maybe applying what doing what you know you should be doing. Yeah. So I think that since we're still in this acquisition, knowledge acquisition thing, let's also, for those who might not remember or might not know, bring in the different modalities. Okay, some of us are visual learners, some auditory learners, some are kinesthetic learners. In most of the knowledge that we in the knowledge world deal with, gustatory and olfactory, meaning taste and smell, is less so important. But it's important, I think, for people to figure out what their predominant learning style is. Okay.
Yes.
Like, some people need to see stuff in order to remember it. Others do okay with just hearing it. Those are like the audio podcast junkies, right? They hear it, kind of sticks, right? For me, listening to an audio-only podcast, let's say when I'm cruising down the highway in my car, is very frustrating, because I am a very kinesthetic learner. I need to write things down. I have to do something. I have to move, right? So that's how I learn. And so, it's like, this is so interesting. He said something really valuable, but how do I capture it?
Yes.
Because when I just hear it, it just evaporates. Okay. And for me, then it's very, very frustrating. I can get the gist of things. And of course, if you listen to a whole book about one central idea, you're going to remember the central idea. But details like that are very, very tricky. So again, sometimes it helps even to combine certain things, like reading aloud while pacing. Okay?
Yes.
You see it because it's visual. Maybe you have even done notes with like some doodles and stuff, something like that kind of graphic visualization. You see it, you hear your own voice because you read it aloud, and you're pacing, meaning you're involving movement and some kinesthetic something to the learning. And sometimes that can be very beneficial. Okay, watch where you're going, people, but you get the drift. So because if you're a kinesthetic person who needs to, where it helps to write things down, it doesn't help if you listen to the same information 50 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Your time would be better spent to literally write it. I give you an example. I cannot learn by heart. Okay. My memory does not function like that. I really can't. I mean, learning by heart for me is, it just doesn't work. It doesn't stick. Okay. And when I did my high school final examination, some countries call it the college entrance examination. It's kind of the final checkpoint of all your knowledge from high school, right? So you're 18, 19 years old, and it's this really big deal. Very often, success or failure is only measured by those 2 or 4 hours that you write the test in that particular subject. Okay. So when I did this, I had 8 subjects.
Okay.
2 times math, physics, chemistry, German, German and French, philosophy, and political economics. Yeah.
So easy.
Oh, and the last subject, like political economy or economical politics, I don't even know how you would really do it. What they did in the test is that they gave you a headline and they kind of expected you to just regurgitate that whole chapter.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
You could potentially write it in your own words, but if you wanted to be really sure, you had to do it. And it was like a real book. I'm sure it was such a traumatic thing for me that I'm sure I still have the book somewhere, right? And I have probably written that book in its entirety 20 times. Because I was writing and writing. In the end, I was in a science specialty program. But I'm sure that last year I spent more time on that economics test than I did on math.
Wow. Okay.
And so sometimes it takes that kind of repeated effort in your target modality. And in the end, it didn't even work, because what happened is that I looked back over the last however many exam years that I could find, and I took the top headlines that they did, and I studied like top 5 or top 7 of those.
Okay.
That gamble. I mean, it's not like I didn't know the others at all, but those I knew really well. In the end, it was my best subject in the exam because I happened to get those particular headline questions. But you know, it's like you have to know how you learn and adapt accordingly. I'm not saying take risks and only study the minimum and, you know, gamble like I did back then, but I felt I really didn't have a choice because it did not stick. And it was such a ridiculous subject and taught in a ridiculous way and questioned in a ridiculous way. But the thing is, I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. Okay, because I couldn't have read that book 500 times, it wouldn't have stuck. I couldn't have had somebody read it to me and record it and listen to the recording again and again and again. There wouldn't have been any chance of it sticking. So find what works for you. And sorry for this elaborate anecdote, but like I said, trauma, high school trauma for me.
There you go. I was clear. So sorry for your pain.
Yeah, like so many years later, I still feel it. Yes.
Okay. You made me think of something. My husband last year, the prior year, so this was 2021, he spent all 2021 studying for an engineering test. It's not the professional engineering, the PE. It's another one that gives you permission to work in other states in the United States. So instead of going in each state and taking a license per license per license per state, it covers a certain amount. Anyways, studied so much, and you know what he did? He did exactly what you were saying. He would read something from his books and he would write it, and then so on and so on. And then he would say, now I need to check that my information is correct. So he would grab a new notebook and transfer the information as he was checking it. And then he said, now I need to clean my notes for the test. Because it was one of those tests that they allowed them to use, open book tests. And so he said, now I have to do the notes for the test. So he did that 3 times. And I'm going to be honest, he didn't pass, because it's one of those tests that people need to do I think it's in 4 parts. So ideally, people take one part 1 year, a second part another year. So it takes you around 4 years to complete the test. And he didn't pass, but he said, you know what? I don't need this. But he studied and it helped him a lot. He did remember things. He's now using it again in the office to help the new people that are coming in. So he's helping them, and he's doing so much with all of that knowledge now. But that was one of the most critical things that I always see my husband do when he's studying for something. And it worked, because he said, I remembered the problem was the timing. With all the questions that they have in all these tests, it's just not enough time. And it was a 2-day test of 8 hours. Oh. Imagine that. Yes, 8 hours for 2 days. Brutal. 2 days? Yes, it was brutal. But I told him, don't worry, it's, you take it if you want to, and another time, now you know how to take it, blah, 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 blah. So, but that was one of the things. Why am I saying it even if he didn't pass? Because this is his method of study regardless. And it has helped him pass other tests, other very complicated tests. Yeah. So if that works for people, for an engineer, it's going to work. I tried it myself. I started doing that, and it does help, but I'm kind of lazy to write it down, reading the book, having the book, and then pass it.
I must say, one of the things that because of this laziness factor, I'm a little bit like that too, is I type more than I write by hand.
Okay.
Typing, because I type really fast. Okay. And typing doesn't give you the same effect, I find. Yeah. For me, it doesn't give me the same effect. I can type the notes, and sometimes I do, and I re-summarize, I phrase it differently, I do different bullet points and things like that, because writing for me just takes too long. It takes,
yeah.
But sometimes we need also the slowed down pace to think, because sometimes I do my planning, my long planning on paper, and then I transfer it, because I need this visual and I need this time overview and things like that to make that happen. Okay, so yeah, very, very interesting. And this is actually a really lovely story that the knowledge you acquire might not end up being useful in the way that you think it's going to be useful, but it forms your brain. It forms your brain. I studied, one of my majors in college was mathematics. Okay. Don't ask me any theorem anymore or any complex integral, things like that. I just don't remember. But I still have this brain that was trained by mathematics. And when I coach, and when I deal with business matters, and when I summarize, and when I plan, it is there.
Mhm.
It is there. The approach, the way that you see yourself, the way that you organize information, and so on, it is there. Okay.
Mhm.
And so, I'm sure that your husband didn't get any stupider by investing a year in studying this hardcore stuff, as you said, right? So let's see that as for what it is. A lot of things are not necessarily dollars and cents, tangible things that you get out of learning, but you grow nevertheless as a person. So, and I think that even if folks were to keep that more in mind, like we talked about sponge learning. I love that term that you said earlier, because it's really like that, like suck it up and then squeeze it out. And, and this kind of cramming just for a test and learning for a test, you do yourself justice, because you just learn for the test. You don't learn for life. You don't train your brain, right? Because I think that very often nowadays the actual knowledge is kind of, sorry, I'm saying something very, very outrageous now, is very, very irrelevant, because all the information is available at the touch of a button, right? And nowadays with the Google search engine and AI helping and all that stuff, knowledge is there. But what you do with it, how you analyze it, how you apply it, that is the trick. And without training yourself how to think, what to do with information, you're just going to not learn and grow. Learn and grow.
Exactly. And it could be the best technique, but if it doesn't work for you, you're going to feel frustrated. So let me, now talking about techniques, let me mention there's a technique that they call bionic reading. Okay, it's same as there is speed reading, there's and dyslexic reading, there's bionic reading.
Oh,
so
tell me.
It's fascinating. Do you remember how when we would receive, that typical game that would say, you only see the top of the letters or the numbers and everything else is covered. So they tell you, guess what number or letter it is. And then guess what the word is. And you believe it says dog and all it says is 108, right? But all of those words, if you think about them, which is very, very strange, they're all in bold letters. Okay. Check it out, and it's very strange. Well, somebody took that technique and said, okay, so sometimes we only need, there's also the game that says, finish the sentence, and it has the letters, the first three letters, and then it has a number, it has what's it called, a exclamation mark, and then another letter, but it doesn't have the word itself. It's kind of like making you finish the word, okay? And then those letters, some of them are bold. Well, that technique was used towards what they call bionic reading, where the first letter of the sentence is, the first three letters of the sentence are bold, and then they move on to the next one and they put it in bold, then the next one they put it in bold, and then the next one, depending, they kind of divide it, and then sometimes the middle letters are in bold, or the most important part of the topic is in bold letters. What is that the purpose? Well, for some people, that technique about completing the sentence was a way for them to remember things. And
Because
so that
in the creation process.
yeah, it's very strange, but I realized it works for me, because just plain letters for me, it's like boring. It really is boring. But when you have those bionic letters, it becomes interesting. I don't know how.
The game, it's kind of gamified and stuff like that. But what you just said about filling in those blanks, right? And even in spaced repetition, like when we have flashcards and things like that, there's this concept of a cloze, CLOZE,
Okay.
which is just a part is missing, like word is missing or something, because there's this big difference between recognition and production and create, and where it becomes very, very apparent is languages. Okay, because you can be very good at listening in on a language and understanding a language. You can even watch the news in that language on TV, and it makes, you can follow, like, I'm so good at that language. And then you're supposed to talk to somebody and you can't talk. You can't. Because really, like the recognition, which is you hear it or you read it, you're experiencing it passively, that is one thing, and it's one part of the brain. And creating things, filling in a blank, talking a language, is a completely different part, because you have to put things together in a certain way, and it's a completely different effort. Okay.
Yes.
So this doesn't surprise me all that much, and it might also have something to do with it. But that's really quite interesting. I had not heard about that bionic technique. I think we all kind of know a little bit about it, also from just bolding things and highlighting certain things, and then quizzing ourselves. A lot of us have done that, because that is, again, this creation thing, right? I have quite a few gray hairs here, you see, from some of my mathematics students reading math solutions or reading the theory, and not ever getting down to the doing and to writing and to figuring it out, right? It just work, and certain topics work less for that than others. Ones where you have to be creative. A lot of sciences, you have to create it, you have your solution. So very, very interesting. So getting involved. So do some of these bionic things also involve mnemonics? Because mnemonics are great also to anchor information and making it stick. Acronyms, mnemonics, metaphors, imagery, things like that. What is your experience with that?
Very sure yet. I'm still kind of in the process of trying to figure out how I can use that, because there's now books in Amazon that have that method. The problem is that not all authors are going to create books like that, right? So I haven't had much experience. I've only read like little pieces of how it looks like, and when I read it, I'm like, oh wow, it sticks. And but I'm guessing that when it comes to acronyms, it would make sense, right? Because when you're learning, one of the best things that they say, right, is always kind of find something in that what you're studying, and put the most important words that you need to learn, and then find something to make it, right? Something, a sound or a word that you already know, which again brings us back to the putting parts together, things that you already know, towards connecting the dots.
Yeah,
So
first you take the information and you chunk it.
yes.
Yeah, cut it up. Then you kind of summarize it. And then maybe you come up with a way of remembering that there were like 5 parts to the summary and stuff like that. One thing that all coaches know is SMART goals. And more than coaches know it by now, but SMART goals. And SMART stands for?
Or
Measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. Okay, so it's just criteria for certain things that you should keep in mind as you set a goal. Okay, there's more, but if your goal is already SMART, is already very good start. But like now everybody talks about SMART goals, and it has become this kind of thing that help people remember this, because if I were to list you just those 5 words, okay,
yeah.
so, I think that is a good way of catching some of this information, right? Another trick that is very often used is, and it goes again with, it's different from storytelling, but it's another way of making a mnemonic, is to attach a weird thing to a word. And that often is the case, let's say, when you learn another language, the word sounds like a word I know. And the word that I know reminds me of something. And now I'm trying to connect the reminds me of to the word in the other language. And now of course I can't find any, sorry about that. But and the more outrageous we make this visual or this picture, and whether it be an auditory picture, a visual picture, or something movement related, the more outrageous we make it, the more it sticks as well. Right? Sorry, I really can't think of any right now. But it's connecting through the sounds like or the reminds me of, and making it outrageous, making it funny, making it somehow memorable. Really, it's making it memorable that your brain is going to remember. And maybe by the end of the session, I'm gonna figure one out. Yeah.
Isn't that what they do in Japan and in China? That they have all of these letters, all these words, but then next to it, they always have some image that is kind of universal, right? For people to, well, maybe I don't understand what's written there, but I do understand where it says no spitting or no, doing something on the street that you're not supposed to do, that you're supposed to do in the bathroom, things like that. That's what it says. But those kind of, that's or for example, voltage. You're right. Everybody understands the volt. Everybody understands recycle. When you see the form, the figure of recycle, everybody knows what it means. So, yeah, I think it comes back to the part where you were saying that some people, when they're learning, they start doing little figures, right? They're repeating stuff and they start doing always a little circle, the flowers, the hearts, and all this kind of stuff. For another way of studying that I kind of remember is what you and I are doing right now, which is bouncing back ideas to one another. Because one of the things that I try to do is that when I'm here right now live with you, I try to talk to the camera, right? Because it looks good, let's say, in video. But when you're talking, I like to look at you in your eyes, your face, because it gives me the expressions that I'm looking for. It gives me more cues. It tells me stuff that words normally don't tell you. So bouncing back ideas, let's put it this way. brings all those methods together, where looking at you, I'm kind of using the comparison method, right? Where I'm saying, oh, she was doing this face when she was telling me that. She was sitting like this when she was telling me this, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Yeah. And when you're mad, you're like, she was mad. Oh, yeah, that's right. She was mad because of this and this. So you remember stuff, right? And also it helps you connect with what you are talking about, which is why you have those study groups, which is why you have in college and uni, you have, hey, you have people who say, let's create a study group. Sure, and it makes sense, because bouncing back ideas and what other people understand just gives you a different perspective of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm such a firm believer of study groups. I am always one spearheading the study group effort. Even now, when I go to a coaching thing, we have peer groups later. I am the one creating the WhatsApp group so we can all stay connected and all those kind of things, because I really think that it's very important to get different input, to elucidate or look at a problem from, or an issue or a topic from different angles, with different life experiences maybe being brought in and things like that. Also, part of that, I think, which is very important, is that you learn if you teach. So when sometimes, let's say I would, I don't do it for these discussions really, but if I had to do a video, a live for something, that I'm maybe not as familiar with, what would I do? I would study, and I would already try to, in my head, figure out what are the really important points. And what is really the gist of it? And if I had to explain it to a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, or God forbid a 2-year-old, how would I explain it? And that truly creative process of dealing with the material, and try to explain vector spaces to a 2-year-old, it's not going to happen, okay? But
exactly.
It's nevertheless like, if I had to teach it to somebody 2 years younger than I in experience, 2 years less experience than I, somebody who has the basics, who is in this field, and I had to explain this thing, how would I do it? How would I do it? It's very, very important. And it just popped into my head is to start with the question as well, to always be clear about the question, because when we're clear about the question, about the questions we want to answer by learning certain material, it really puts a different spin on it. And if we then anticipate, let's say in this scenario that I just said, that we had to do a live with Q&A, if you anticipate all the different questions that people might be asking you, or all different objections people might bring to the table, and you try to think, when you look at the material, what could go wrong with this? What could, not only me, I don't struggle with things, let's say, but what could other people struggle with? Then you would really hone in on it differently, and it would make your engagement with the material different. Right? It's not this dry, abstract thing, but it is something that becomes part of the fabric of your thoughts, and becomes at the ready. And it is much more of a powerful way of making it stick even in the long term, and usable, because knowledge if it's not usable. Exactly. Right? And you have to learn these things and then go out and be able to apply it. And learning with application in mind, learning with teaching in mind, learning with raising awareness about something in mind, puts a different intensity in your learning. Yeah, and hopefully it's something that you like and that you believe in. So yeah, that makes it easier. Yeah.
Right. Well, even in marketing, they use these kind of methods, right? When you look at a commercial, when you look at oh, okay. So here's another example. Music. How many commercials don't we know that use music? Catchy jingles. And you learn not only the name of the company, but you learn the phone number of the company, which is the whole purpose, right? And here you are sometimes in your kitchen, in your bedroom, taking a shower, and you think about the song and you start like singing it and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, so they achieved their purpose, right? So something sticky, something, the ABCs, A, B, C, D, a lot of people, so many people that I've seen on TV, excuse me, on YouTube, that the police officers ask them, you know, when they catch them and they think they're drunk and stuff like that, they ask them to get out and say their ABCs. People cannot say A, B, C, D. They sing the song.
Yeah, that's because it's so much easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is one method that, however you want to see it, worked. It was a song, right? And even languages now have songs for people that are learning languages so that they can repeat them and say them. One of the things, yeah. So I know, for example, in Arabic, there's a lot of songs. If you think about it, how did we learn the well, our national anthem? How did we learn the national anthem for each country? You know, how do we do that? Well, that's by singing, that's by repetition. Every single day at school, you know, they would make you come out and say and sing and do all these kind of things, ceremony and blah, blah, blah. So there's a method, and that is always sometimes remembering things. So acronyms, if you can remember an acronym through a song, there's a movie, I'm going to remember it. I think it's Mall Cop. I think so.
Okay.
Hear me out. There's a movie called Mall Cop, and his daughter sings very pretty. So, but the mall cop, not only works as a mall cop, but he goes at nights and teaches immigrants to speak English. One of them was having difficulties remembering the story of the United States. And so suddenly the daughter stepped in and said, well, let's see if you can remember through lyrics. And they started thinking, what is your favorite song? Well, he said something like, let's say, the Eagles. Oh, okay, the Eagles. Well, let's see this song. And through that song, she created a story of the United States using that song. And it sticks with you.
Wow.
It sticks with you because it's a song that you already know, that many people like. And then it's the story of the United States that you kind of remember. And when you put both together, boom, it's incredible. Yes, it's a fantastic method. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's like mixing up these different modalities: music, auditory, movement, maybe you dance to it, you sing, right? So it, and then also in certain cases, the sense of community, Because maybe also one of the things that made it stick for that person is that he or she was in a group with people learning the same thing that also can like raise the intensity of the learning. We all know that sometimes in really fun workshops, we learn kind of effortlessly and it sticks with us versus sitting by our lonesome at home and trying to make things stick. Right.
Correct.
That too is really important. So what else can we talk about the stickiness of information before we already come to a close? This was a really exciting discussion.
I loved it.
Anything else you want to?
I think another thing that people could actually use is what we are constantly repeating. You can use your values, you can use your beliefs, you can use religion, you can use all of the things that are a part of you towards learning. That's incredible, but you can actually do that. And so our beliefs, well, okay, so of this, let's say, part of history, what is something that I understand or know? If your family was settlers, maybe they arrived, one of the first few families in the United States, in Europe, or wherever, and you start thinking, oh, this is interesting to talk about or to hear. Let me read about this. And sometimes that story, just because it is part of you, of your family, or ideas, you're going to learn it.
And sometimes effortlessly, right?
Exactly.
I mean, if there's this initial passion, this drive to know more, this curiosity, this true visceral curiosity about something, then it becomes so easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember being so fascinated with certain topics in college that I walked out of the lecture and it was part of me. I didn't need to go back home and study really hard for whatever. I mean, you did the reading and everything else, but the knowledge was there because it was like so exciting and so fascinating, right? And sometimes you have to be a little bit creative about finding the context that would make it fascinating.
Yes, exactly, because not everything is fascinating, right? That's why we become sponge students.
Yeah. That's right. So I think that taking time to reflect on things after a while is also important. Like, what was I learning? What was the really important thing that out of that? How did it change me? How did it change my life? How did it change the way I approach my work or my family? Mm-hmm. Whatever it was about, and kind of bringing in a little bit this meta view of how did I learn this? What made the learning hard? What made the learning easy? And kind of just raising that awareness about trying to figure out what makes learning easier or possible for you, because everybody is different. And there's study techniques up to gazoo on this planet, right? But you have to do what works for you. And I have coached people as they were studying, as they were trying to figure these things out. So this again, even though you might not think about it that much, but this again is something where a coach can help. So reach out in case you need a little extra pep in your step as it comes to
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So shall we close it there, Sandra?
Absolutely. I think it's a good time.
Good. So thank you all for listening, for being here with us. Show us some love by subscribing to the channel, and maybe do like the video or give us a comment. Any kind of engagement would be very much appreciated. If you have concerns, questions, suggestions, reach out. You can find us. Our contact information is in the description attached to this video. So reach out. We will be here for you, and maybe you can join us on the show sometime.
Yes. Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you, everybody. And
First,
have a good day, Claudia.
okay,
Thank you for today.